It's a tough act to follow the panel discussion, especially with Vikram's candor and Karti's probing questions. But we'll try not to make it very boring. So thank you everyone for joining us for this last session. Thank you PK for doing this. The media services ecosystem has gone through a lot of things in the last few years. In fact, morning when we started the conference, I did a chat with Sam, and he traced the journey back to how it all started in the mid 90s. The AOR model medicine launched, and then HT Media happened, and things went from there. And here we are in 2023, doing a lot of different things. Uh, you know, I think the hottest topic what I've figured is remuneration from clients. We'll not start with that. I think Sam hit the nail on the head in the morning when in one short sentence he said we have to learn to start saying no, right? And I think some efforts, I'm told, are being made in that direction. So we'll come to that later. I think the previous panel explored a lot of that. Because straight off the bat, let me ask you, right? When the year started, GroupM does this TYNY report, which is launched a day before the pitch medicine, advertising report. Both reports roughly had a ballpark number of 15 to 16% advertising growth. We are sitting almost, more than 10 months. The year is over, and it's been a tumultuous year. A lot of things have gone through. Part baggage of the last few years, part new things that have happened this year. Where do you think we'll end up with when it comes to average advertising growth in the industry?
Yeah, hi everybody. No, you're right. I think we always start working prior to the beginning of the year and try to estimate how the next year, or rather from a calendar perspective, how the next year goes on. And a lot of indications, estimates, etc. We work on that, and it's true that we estimated close to about 15% in 23. Um, Unfortunately, there have been lots of ups and downs which happened during the course of the year, and multiple aspects happen. I mean, it's easy to give a number and move on, but I think primarily we had a lot of variations happening from the entire startup ecosystem, right? And that actually pumped in. If you look at in 2019, uh, close to about any quarter you look at it, the close to about 18 to 20% used to be the kind of contributions from many of the startup ecosystem. If you start looking at from October, November, December 2020 onwards, I think the range is anywhere between 30 to 40, 42%, right? Until about, you can say 22, Q3 from a calendar perspective. So therefore, any kind of variation, we all know why that variation happened, because they were working on their business models and they wanted to get a lot more, into building their, profitability and so on. And of course, multiple categories are different reasons. And when you see that, the contribution of spend starts coming down. Now, I remember many years back when we had, the top categories when you look at it, and at one point in time, telecom used to be like the number two, number three kind of category.
Absolutely.
And when that category started spending lesser, we had substitutes, right? We had e-commerce coming up. We have multiple other substitutes happening. But I don't think, that happened for us, specifically this year. That's one factor. Of course, the regular aspects of, all the inflation-led challenges, etc., which every single business had to go through, including ours. Just adding on to the remuneration part. But having said that, including ours, all of us had the issues on expenses, right? And therefore looking at the health of the business, which again put on challenge on spending lesser, right? And obviously you can add on all to multiple other pressures which are going on. So net, the first quarter this year and the calendar year was quite a challenging one. And which could be for many the fiscal year of last year, right? But when you look at all the numbers, I think we may get closer to about 2-3 percentage points down, right? It's certainly not two; it's towards almost three, right? Uh, I think from August onwards, a lot of different categories. For example, the number one category, which is the CPG, FMCG category, is showing some kind of progress on that, and hoping that some of the others actually can come in. But if you look at it, this is what happened in 2023. We're counting that maybe the next 2 months can hold on to a better situation for the industry itself.
Thanks. Good pointers. In fact, there are two, three things I can make out from that. So when PK says that, we might end up shaving off 3% from the projected growth. So if you ballpark take a number at around 1.5 lakh crores, we're talking almost 5,000 crores gone, right? Of growth that could have been there. So that's a sizable number. The other part of, in fact, there's a telling statistic. Again, I was going through the Pitch Medicine report last year. Out of the top 50 advertisers, 12 were digital first companies, and majority of those 12 were gaming companies. Now it's easy to guess what's going to happen. Most of them will drop out of that 50 list. And if you look at the list of the year before, more than 30% of top 25 churned. Like you said, telecom completely went away. Other categories came in, but the categories that started firing, now they have gone sort of, dry. And that brings me to the, next point that you mentioned. August onwards, a lot of CPG companies have started firing. We recently saw many reports. Levers increased their ad spend by almost 670 crores in one quarter. Dabur today announced last quarter they pumped up 46% more ad spend, if I'm not mistaken. Coca-Cola has announced similar. Colgate, though, for our colleagues from the media side of the business, I don't know whether lever spending more is a good thing or a not so good thing, because the amount of inventory that you have to put on the table for that money is immense. But having said that, all of these CPG companies are now starting to fire, right? While it might not make up for the loss that is accrued on account of all these startups and D2C companies going away, uh, this is substantial money on the table. Why is the media side of the business not able to see enough effect of all of these CPG companies firing? Because that's the FMCG. Again, I'll refer to the Pitch Medicine report, was some 33% of the overall ad spend. That's almost one third of the entire spend in 2022. So if they are pumping up so much money in the last quarter, we should have seen a much better recovery than what we are seeing.
Good point. I think you made a lot of points. Um, See, the ordering of top clients in the market. Again, if you go back to 5 years back, I don't think any year has been without a churn, right? Or a movement of, I think it's not correct to say churn, because the top 10 contribution change every single year, right? And I think that will continue. I don't think we should look at only from that measure. Um, your question is actually, when spends are slowly coming back, and at least by a couple of categories, why is the media set not seeing that fully? That's a very interesting perspective, because if you actually look at it, the media landscape is not the same, right? The opportunities and solutions have only multiplied, right? Uh, it's not anymore that the spend mix is the same what you look at 5 years back, right? Whether you call it from TV to digital to print and others, right? But also within each of them, I think a lot of changes have started happening. And I think when marketers are looking at planning themselves, it's also true that their priorities, and not many of the priorities are only long term. I think many are mixed with some of the short term priorities also. So all of this actually looking for solutions where many of the media side, the media ownership side can provide. And some are able to do it. Some are new solutions. I mean, the entire subject of influencer marketing is a completely new solution, which is probably only held with probably 40% of the overall addicts as a solve. Rest everything is new, right? So these opportunities, etc., also eat into many of the money coming back, right? So therefore, that's a challenge for media ownership to work on, owners to work on. What are some of those great solutions that you can really attract to the the pie which is actually coming back, right? Or the spends which are getting new. So that's the biggest challenge here. And also, the fact is, from a marketer's side, it even becomes more complicated because you have not just 100 solves, you have some 300 solves, right? You got to solve every month, you got to solve every quarter. Sometimes they may not even think one full year, right? So these things make it to make choices much more tougher. And unless the supply side is able to make good solves and represent in that form, it is quite a challenging as well as interesting and opportunistic for each of the media owner.
Yeah, I think most media owners have been kind of struggling to address that issue of how to get companies to spend more, especially with the D2C startup ecosystem drying up, all the gaming, e-gaming, betting money going off the table. There is naturally lesser money now chasing the same amount of inventory available, and uh, whatever growth we are talking about now, naturally, I'm not privy to this year's number in detail, but digital, of course, will kind of be the largest share of growth. There are two things that have happened also in the media landscape this year. One is that if you leave out the unusual years in the last, say, 15 years, whether it was a COVID year or a demonetization, GST, I think this will be a inflection year for the TV business, if I may. Uh, if you look at the last 2 quarters of the results of at least the listed companies, most have reported tepid growth or hardly any growth, right? IPL, we all know, on an overall spend basis, degrew, television degrew even more. So do you think this is going to be a year for the television industry where ADEX uh, might not grow or hardly grow? And what will be the implication of that? Is that trajectory going to continue in the future, and more money, increasingly more money shifts to digital? You know,
Again, this is one question which we keep asking at least in the last 3 years now. And I know this year itself we had multiple debates in many of your own forums. Right? I think, see, look, I don't want to say this year is like inflection. One of the factors is if you look at many of the global markets, India is still growing. We are talking about 3 points down. But the fact is, even with 3 points down, close to 12% is a good growth, right? There's no doubt about it. It will still fall in the top, some of the top two markets growth happening global. TV is still growing for our market. TV has substantial, strengths from a language perspective and a region perspective and a lot of other aspects also. It's still the largest media reach, 63% media reach for TV is the number one, right? Of course, digital will continue to grow and yeah, it may come maybe equal in few years and stuff like that. Uh, but there is a lot of challenge, especially in a year like this. This is a very, very interesting and unique year, as at least I have personally tried to study this. And it's not been an easy year, right? And I don't think, just like COVID when it happened, everybody was so hurried up to conclude what is the definition of normalcy. I think that is the first mistake. I think any one of us who did that, that's the first mistake we did because it is still evolving, right? 21 was a great year, 22 was a great year, and then you have a year like this, and that's all because of multiple things, maybe estimation, assumptions went wrong. Similarly, I don't think we should take one particular year, and I don't want to call it this year as a foundation to call any media under any inflection, right? The other point is, yes, for television industry, I think there is a lack of tech solves which they are today having. If you look at micro targeting, I think digital as well as print, to some extent, even other media like radio and cinema have. But unfortunately, TV is still answering it through, languages and region. And I strongly believe that if they're able to bring some tech solve, that can be a great opportunity for the medium again to come back, right? So I think it's going to be a course like that. There are many more categories which are still finding, building, brands through TV is still making sense. There are many more brands which are seeing, even for the short term, how TV can be useful. So I don't want to say any particular inflection, but it is a challenge, especially when you have over close to about even 300 days of cricket within TV itself is a challenge, right?
220 days,
Yeah,
Karthik
you
was
know.
telling me. So I think BCCI must be thinking there's still 130 days of opportunity to be
Yeah,
monetized.
yeah. So those are challenges within that media, right? I'm sure, they'll all start working closely more to find some tech solves and see how that can be looked at. They'll all work more harder on creating more solutions which can be better. But I still feel that TV is here to stay, right? It will have a more number of growing years in terms of the addicts. Uh, not like it's going to go down. But yeah, its mix will get impacted, right? So what it is today, let's say it's about close to about 30 odd percent, 32%. Yeah, that may get impacted because there is a larger growth happening in digital, and that's mainly because our industry is not anymore to do with only organized sector, right? There's a close to about close to 40 odd percent, which is there on the long, medium, advertisers that's available in the market. It's so unfortunate that TV is only able to get very few, lower percentage of that. That's why I talked about the tech. Now, once you start answering that, then things change because there's somebody else is getting a much higher share of that when you look at the overall addicts.
Yeah. Before I move on to digital, in fact, that's a good point you make about expanding the advertiser base. I remember LV telling me last year that print still, uh, you know, attracts 6 lakh advertisers in India, right? If you look at what Facebook and Google are doing, their SMB or the long tail advertisers, as we call them, runs into tens of thousands, if not lakhs already. So I think that's one area for TV to go. Before I move on to digital, again, let me, given that how it's been for the TV business, do you think, you know, of course, TV is here to stay. The share the command perhaps will continue to be stable, like it's happened across many other more evolved markets. But do you think in the next 2-3 years price correction will happen in TV?
See, price correction is again a function of demand and supply, right? And it's not just only demand and supply, it's also about some great quality viewing content which comes in, right? And it's again through how multiple different genres behave in that context. Uh, if you're asking, is there opportunities for price correction? Definitely, there are opportunities for price correction. But I feel that there are too many options in one single media, and trying to make everybody win is not an easy factor. Now, that from you look at from the other side, winning every moment is not also easy. So there is sometimes, you know, should I lose, should I not win, or should I lose less, or should I win less? All these aspects come in, and therefore, you know, if you're able to consolidate some of these efforts, if you're able to get, solutions in much more in a simpler form, then I think you have a better strategy to look at a subject of from a pricing perspective. But the more you have, weaker, assets within your own, portfolio, then it also somewhere kind of put a challenge to that, right? So these all play, but I feel when the demand gets, if the demand gets picked up and stuff, it gives an opportunity for the supply to look at correction as well.
Absolutely. And demand supply, of course, also is a factor of audience engagement, the reach of the medium, the time spent, and all of those are important factors. Uh, and the consolidation that we see in the TV business is perhaps a result of what's been happening in the last 4 or 5 years. Let me move to digital advertising now. And last many years, the trend has continued, and it's likely to continue. Increasingly, the larger and larger share of the growth is going to digital advertising. And we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years the growth of Instagram. Now WhatsApp has come into the fray. Growth of the e-commerce platforms. That's one big story of the last 3-4 years. In fact, some of the tepid growth that Google, Facebook have seen this year globally is also on account of Amazon significantly growing. If you just add up advertising revenue numbers of Flipkart and Amazon in India, they would easily surpass cinema, radio, and some of the other media combined and much more. What is the qualitative aspects you've seen this year? specifically in terms of change of the kind of spend that's happened on digital, or what kind of view clients are having on that. Last 4 years were mushrooming of influence. Everybody wanted to do influencer marketing. Content marketing started 7 8 year back 8 years back. Everybody wanted to do that. This year, given the headwinds in the industry overall, what are the sort of things you've seen in digital media which are new and which are likely to stay in digital advertising?
Yeah, so uh, it's not a very, I mean, some of them have scaled up more. Like, for example, the entire performance marketing has scaled up more. Um, and for all the reasons which I mentioned earlier, for marketers to look at also from their short term goals and things like that, right? And it is actually working to multiple categories also. So, therefore, there is repeat spending and repeat investment into that. Definitely, e-commerce is only scaling up, right? And there are a lot of ancillary e-commerce kind of marketplaces or transaction that happen. So the solutions on that is also going up, right? I see the entire influencer marketing is a big change which is happening in the especially last 2 years, and that's actually bringing a lot more different kinds of solves and how different categories are looking at it, how different brands within the same category are looking at it, right? It's again from a digital perspective. I also see that there are multiple emphasis onto community-based solutions within a platform, right? Uh, I see some of the tech products enabling much more into focus on outcomes, which can be looked at from that context, which again is not just a currency, but also as a product which is coming up. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing. But I also see from the context of more, there are more clients. So if there were zero clients who are actually doing from a first party data kind of solutions which they're looking at, today is not anymore zero. I mean, it's not 100 maybe, but it is certainly progressing. And these are subjects which are not to chase perfection, but we should look at how it progresses, because every single client who's able to do a repeat is an inspiration for another client or another category, right? So these are trends which you're seeing. So it's very similar, but the scale up is where the largest aspect is happening on this, right? Yeah.
So digital advertising, of course, has many legs, and one of the big implications for, I think, media services agencies has been also the mushrooming of startup digital advertising. Recently we conducted some programs in tier one cities, for instance, Ahmedabad, or even metros like Calcutta, Chennai. The number of digital advertising startups that have mushroomed, I'm talking agencies, is humongous. Each of the city has at least 40, 50 uh, meaningful digital advertising startups. Now that has implications for the large agencies, the established network agencies, Indian and global, because obviously while you have a lot to offer to the client in terms of services and the knowledge you built and the data uh, tech you built over years, but nimble footedness, fresh young blood with creative ideas has a lot of value, right? Each of those agencies might not be uh, large enough for you to bother about, but 20 of them put together really does command a reasonable size share of the client's money. And the other thing that has happened in digital advertising, unlike the earlier AOR model, there's no exclusivity, right? A client typically could work with multiple agencies through the year, digital agencies on many campaigns. So as India's largest media services company, how do you look at that this entire challenge panning out? Uh, what do you do to kind of continue to retain the share, also keep attracting these clients who are very tempted to go to these younger nimble-footed startups?
Yeah, a lot of your questions had linkage to the earlier platform here, right, which Karthik ran. But yeah, it's a subject that it's a continuous thinking that it is required. First of all, it's always welcome to see more and more competition coming in, because it just helps you to get more stronger. That's my belief, right? Uh, the other point is, I think if your business is already been attended to from an outcome perspective, and we saw some of the conversations happening even in the earlier session, uh, I don't think agencies today are only in the business of managing media, right? I think they are very much focused on the transformative growth for clients as well as for themselves, right? And this essentially means that you have to be, more agile, you have to be more proactive, you have to continuously think on how do you strategically look at how transformation, how can your thinking be more transformative before you go and, advise or recommend something to your own marketers or your clients, right? So that is very essential. At the same time, if you are going to be myopic in some of the areas, then it's a trap which you can fall into. So yes, this space will only populate more. This space will only have many more radical and inventive offerings to happen. So as agency, if you are able to strengthen your offering, right, you are able to give, uh, a great narrative, one narrative to the solution for marketers. You got to do all of these points, get great talent, great upskilling, lots of every aspect. I'm not going to repeat all of that. But more than everything else, it is very important to have a, a vision of, trying to say that we are in 23, but how do you see yourself in 26, right?
Yeah.
And that vision, earlier, if it was only about you, maybe now it's not just only about you, because the ecosystem is changing much more faster, right? So you got to give more weightage on listening to what's happening, seeing what's happening in multiple different markets, how is the growth, how is the specialism getting strengthened, how is the talent itself changing, and how is talent itself interested on different specialism available today. The more you're able to, you know, start working on it and spending more time on that, I think you will soon get to closer to the vision that you want to do, right? And I always feel that many times our clients itself are great motivation on this. Many times partners itself are motivation on this. Many times I've seen many of these, mushrooms, as we call it, are inspiration for doing multiple
Sure, yeah,
things,
absolutely. You
right?
learn a lot from young,
Exactly.
startup companies, young entrepreneurs. Like the media services companies cracked the legacy media code over a 20-year period. I think now you have to reinvent the wheel and crack the digital code. Let me look at the other side of digital, which is the platforms. And I think what's happened in the digital platform space is unprecedented. The concentration of power. Perhaps 80% or 85% of Indian digital ad spend are concentrated amongst four companies. So now that has many implications, right? The balance of power shifts from the agency side to perhaps other side, or it becomes equalized. The other challenge also is the ownership of first party data that these companies have. It's humongous, right? Facebook knows far more than all of us, than perhaps even the brand knows, right? So how do media services companies build enough knowledge, enough counter that data, first party data that these platforms have, to be able to offer meaningful services or insights to clients? Because client will go to the guy who's in a position to give them data and hence insights and hence all the knowledge they want. And if the platform has it, then the client is very, very tempted to go straight to the platform.
Yeah, so the point is that we need more insights to do better job, right? And if you have an accountable, partner in you, then the discussions become much more easier to work together to find that process and system done, right? It's as simple as that. Now you got to demonstrate how accountable you are, that's for sure. But I think the ability and the capability that you build to, to show that how some of this process can be useful is, you know, initially it may start with one single case, but then you build more cases, then it becomes more credible and much more convincing for marketers to go and come and try with you. I think I'm not much worried on the fact that there are about 80% with 4 to 5 people from that context, because the aspect is also that uh, you want to still grow, right? You can't be saying today you're 80% and tomorrow you may not be 80%. So if you want to really make progress as a consistent thing, then you got to come with solves which is convincing for the people to continue to spend on you, or new people to come on to you, right? And for that, um, what is important is slightly more being accountable and authentic to what you are trying to do for each of the marketer, right? Which I think we have seen that happening. I don't think in any manner it is getting diluted. Of course, challenges will happen. It may happen from a couple of products, which can happen. It may happen from a couple of marketers, who may not be fully convinced. But I have seen progress happening especially in the last 2 to 3 years, when digital accelerated so much more than what it did in the previous years, right? And you got to be at it. You can't, you can't, the solutions come from both sides, right? So you can't,
Yeah.
you have to continue to have a dialogue with the marketer and the partner to find. I think that's also a big job, which as an accountable partner you have for the ecosystem to make it even more successful, right, for both the parties, right?
So before we, open it up to the house, Prashant, my last question about, what Sam said in the morning, learning to say no. What's your view on that? How do you learn to say no? Of course, it has many benefits, starting from, being able to earn better, uh, being able to hire better talent, provide better services. We did a comparison between look at the consultancies versus look at media services companies. They both might offer similar kind of services to clients, but look at the kind of talent consultancies are able to attract and the remuneration they earn and are able to pay versus where agencies stand, right? So how do you start saying that no? Business is tepid. I mean, let's take this year as an example. Business is tepid. Everybody wants a larger share. Everybody wants new clients. uh, we all seek rate corrections from media partners. So a client who comes along says, I'm on pitch. This is my demand. This is my ask. There are agencies who will always be willing to do that. So while easy to say, how do you implement this no?
Yeah, I think you have to say no when you can't do it, right? But I'm a firm believer that for every problem there is a way to solve it.
Where is that line for not do it? Because the line keeps shifting from what I also understand.
You can put the line anywhere you want, right? Now, I think more conversations have to happen, right? I didn't see in any manner when I think there were remarks on ISA and multiple things. I think people are ready to converse. That's a good sign. And I can say on, I don't know if Ankit is here, but even IS is ready to converse, right? And it's important to talk about the problem. Shying away from the problem is the biggest thing that you do, and that is when it goes to the zones of no, right? Whoever it is, whether it is agency versus marketer or agency versus partner, or now, when do you say no? When you have a problem with the principle. I have a problem with the principle, but then I can't do it, therefore I should say no, right? But an industry like ours, where I think a good 25-30% of the industry has worked in every single ecosystem available, whether it's partner or marketer or agency, we have an advantage. The advantage is, I think, we know each of the business so well. So absolutely dialogues are possible. And it's important to uh, have that conversation and make it win-win for everybody, right? I think there is every right for marketer to ask transparency. There is no doubt about it. I think there's every right for partners, media owners to ask for their progress. Every right for every business to ask for their progress, right? Whether no, all of these rebates, etc., are all part of those nuances. But there is right for everybody to grow and have that conversation. Put three or four principles on it. Then rest is your own, intelligence, your own, radical aspects. Of course, there has to be a space for innovation also. So everybody has to put in that also and make it more exciting. There is a lot more generation waiting behind, post us. And if you don't make this conversation today, the conversation should not get broken, right? The baton should not get broken down. So I think that's a large responsibility that we as an industry today have. It'll be interesting after 15 years or so to see the industry, maybe a forum like this, where we have conversations where marketers and agencies have different topics to talk about rather than again talking about
Remuneration.
remuneration.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, and I think that also hits at the heart of the entire model about the future of agencies. Eventually, it's a service business. It is a people's business. Uh, Sam also mentioned in the morning. Mica was started uh, as a primary school to hire talent for advertising, and today, not a single pass out uh, wants to or is joining advertising here. I think that's a telling point that he made. Last question again before we move to the audience. IPL next year, will it be better than this year? What would you bet? Significantly better. Let me ask you. Will it be better?
I'm not an astrologer, Nawal, but I hope it is. I hope it is better, right? I think there are a lot of learning people did on 23 years, and I genuinely feel that there are intelligent, smart people in the industry. They will only try to make it even better than what a interesting and challenging year we are on 23. So I think I'm more confident. I will put my bets on it's a better IPL next year than. I don't know if you want to ask will they meet their margins and stuff like that. That I don't know, right? But definitely, I think it's been learning for everyone how this year has gone, and I'm sure that those learning will be put into use, and it'll be better 24.
Well, as some of the speculation going around, if Reliance and Disney come together, then that will certainly change the dynamics of IPL. I don't know whether that will mean significantly more spends, but certainly how IPL is sold and how it is bought, that will certainly change, which means increase work for media services companies. With that, thank you so much, PK. If you have any audience questions, we can pass the mic around, and you're free to ask PK. Anybody with a question? Okay, good. We can take it offline later. Okay, Karthi.
Okay, we have a question from Karthik. Can we get a mic passed?
Is it possible to conceive for both clients and the media industry, on behalf of both clients and media industry, is it possible to conceive a world where we don't have to mindlessly chase growth every single year? Because the toxicity that growth creates obviously is that it makes us all a even bigger consumption society, and that flies in the face of all the greenwashing we are all keen to do as well.
Personally, I don't think so. Because as long as we continue to be looking for progress and ambition, we're ambitious breed. So before you go to growth of business, is there going to be growth of cost? First question should be that, right? And in my view, when we are obviously ambitious and wanting to do different things, and there will be some cost, some growth of cost, let's say 0.001%. Now, therefore, can you take a sacrifice on 0.001% on bottom line because I'm making the growth flat, right? It's not an easy decision, and I'm saying this into exponential whatever business size you have. And it'll be maybe I think some of the points I think you asked the question, do you have too many people and stuff like that? I'm relating to our business, right? These are right questions, right? Maybe I think we have, I mean, every year is different, right? And especially last 2, 3 years has been very, very dynamically different. And I must tell you, the challenges came, but I think 10x of opportunities also came. I think we went behind many of those opportunities. Some of those opportunities, I think it's time that we should just drop putting any effort. And maybe there is an answer on cost growth there, for example. But coming back to Karthik, your question, I think growth is not a bad word. I mean, uh, growth is about having a better, exciting pulse, momentum, right? And growth may not be only money, but money is a derivative in many cases, right? So if you're able to do something new, if you're able to put newer efforts as a derivative, yeah, you could see a growth. But I am, I belong to the, aspect of having growth for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do we have any further questions? Perfect. On that note, we'd like to humbly thank Prasanth Kumar and Ms. Nawal Ahuja. Thank you so much.